It's your Friday Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer on this Juneteenth, the 19th of June, 2026. Cedar Falls just voted unanimously to approve an $80 million gas plant. That project has been in the works since 2022, and the Cedar Falls Utilities says it's about energy independence, the ability to keep the lights on when the larger grid is strained. But not everyone in Cedar Falls is convinced that gas is the answer. Gavin McGough is Iowa's new Northeast Iowa reporter. I spoke with Gavin yesterday. Gavin, welcome to our team. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I want to find out a little bit more about you, but before that, quickly set the scene on this story, one of the first stories you've reported on for IPR. What did the Cedar Falls City Council approve, and why does Cedar Falls Utilities say it needs this gas power plant?
Yeah, so they, on the first reading, have conveyed land and rezoned it to be public utility access, which means that the Viking Energy Center can go forward. And as you said, that's a gas-powered power plant. It's going to be in kind of a once remote part of Cedar Falls, way down on the southwest border of the city. It's been continuously expanding in that direction, Cedar Falls has, so there's a lot of kind of industrial parks out that way. And it will soon be a 37 megawatt gas-powered plant. Mm-hmm. That's not actually a huge project, but it's enough to power quite a few homes. It's going to be large for this utility. The Cedar Falls utility really just powers the city. But yes, they say they need this because the grid is being strained by sort of all these things we're hearing, this load growth, this push for data centers. And they want to be islanded is the word that the general manager of CFU used at the meeting. They want to be able to click this plant on if the greater grid has rolling blackouts, becomes overstrained, or even if the prices just spike really dramatically.
Yeah, and listeners will want to know why, because we have one of the most renewable states in the country, wind and solar making up over 60% of our grid. Why do we go from that to a unanimous vote for a new gas plant in Cedar Falls? Connect the dots there.
Yeah, and Cedar Falls, it's a community that kind of cares about this. So that did come up. There were residents who were saying, let's innovate, let's invest in battery power. They were using terms like sunken asset. If you invest all this money in a gas plant, like that's not going to be a sustainable future. And Iowans have proven that we can get a lot of energy from our wind. 60% of our power is coming from wind. But the utility says that's actually part of the problem. And when the wind doesn't blow, they still rely on gas energy, and they are not willing to be guinea pigs, they said, with some of this battery technology. They'd rather just go tried and true, trusted gas power. And other utilities in the region have done the same. Over a dozen, apparently, or around a dozen, are looking at doing backup gas generation in a similar manner. That's communities like Ames, Muscatine, Alliant Energy, were some of the ones mentioned by Cedar Falls utility is also looking into this gas power. So renewables, certainly a point of pride and interest for a lot of Iowans, but you just can't cut it right now with the amount of load growth that is happening on the grid.
Yeah. Gavin, on the way out, we want to learn a little bit about you because you're our new Northeast Iowa reporter, having joined our IPR team. Big welcome, by the way. On June 1st, you come to us by way of some interesting stops, a community radio station in Telluride in Colorado, a news directorship at a public radio station in Northwest Missouri. You're an English major. Tell us a little bit more about where you're from originally, your background, and what drew you to public radio journalism.
Yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire, a small town in the Connecticut River Valley, and grew up, kind of listening to NPR in the back of the car. Loved it, loved radio. in college, I had kind of a campus gossip talk show with my good friend Lily. We were high tea radio hour, so every episode was some theme like employability or positivity, and we would just that was our theme. So I got into it that way, and being on the station board. And when I graduated, didn't know what to do. My friend said, "Hey, we need a reporter at my hometown radio in Telluride, Colorado. You can sleep on my parents, in their extra room, basically." So I went and did that, and yeah.
And now you're in Northeast Iowa, the Driftless area, river towns, farming communities, Dubuque, Waterloo, Cedar Falls. What do you know about it so far, and what are you most curious about?
Well, it's an interesting place. It's a very engaged. A lot of these small towns are very engaged with their own lives, their own issues, their own survival as communities. And we know in rural America that is a complicated puzzle for places that are losing young people, for places that are aging and struggling to attract industry, farms, consolidating, all these kind of trends that say rural America is dying. And yet this is a very, a place is full of proud communities that have a lot to offer. And it's interesting to, honor those stories and try to watch them navigate those puzzles. Cedar Falls and Waterloo actually is the biggest city I've ever lived in. So, it's not the biggest city in Iowa by any means, or a large place at all. And yet there is a level of diversity and activity and kind of community nostalgia and identity, which is really powerful to walk into. And tip of the iceberg here for me. There's a lot to understand.
A lot for you to take in, and we sure look forward to your reporting. Gavin McGough, Northeast Iowa reporter for IPR. Thanks for joining the team. Look forward to plenty of other conversations, Gavin.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's your Friday Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer on this June 19th, 2026. Every week, Trash Day comes and goes, of course, and most of us don't think that much about where it all ends up. But Iowa's landfills are filling up, and some of them are running out of room faster than anyone expected. Rachel Cramer, IPR's Harvest Public Media reporter, who covers agriculture, the environment, and rural communities, has been out to some landfills. I spoke with her earlier today. Rachel, nice to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Ben. It's good to be here.
Rachel, start off with how much of a problem is this? How widespread across Iowa?
Well, last year, the Iowa Society of Solid Waste Operations sent a survey asking that question about landfill capacity to the 37 active locations in the state. And so nearly 1/3 of the respondents said their landfills had fewer than 30 years left, and that's under current permits. So some of those are able to get permits and expand either on their property, or they're able to, some of them can purchase adjacent properties and expand that way, but others can't. They're landlocked either because of the site specifics or, other communities or roads, or, they can't buy that property. So this is a growing issue for a lot of different parts of the state, where they're trying to figure out, what do we do in the future when our landfill fills up?
Mm-hmm. And you visited the Boone County landfill, talked with an administrator there. What did you find out, or was there anything surprising?
Well, it's always fascinating to visit a place where, it's something that is so connected to our everyday life. And when I was there, these trucks were unloading what they had picked up that morning. And, I saw drums and ladders and furniture and plastic bags coming out. But what's happening there is that this is a situation where the landfill can't necessarily buy more land to expand. And they were on track to fill up in 14 years if they continued to take waste from the primary service area and the secondary service area. The secondary service area includes Ames and Story County. And so by deciding to end the agreement so that Ames, Story County could continue sending waste there, that will allow that landfill to push out to like 35 years. So it does make a big difference. But as John Rosa, the administrator, said, all landfills are going to fill up eventually. And so we need to do as much as we can to reduce the waste stream through, recycling and reusing and all these other R words in order to make those lifespans stretch out as much as possible. Because when they do fill up, then there's this question of, okay, what do we do next? A lot of places are going to become transfer stations where the garbage is then put on trucks and moved further out to another landfill that has capacity. So that might be in Iowa or that might be in another state.
Rachel, leave us quickly, please, with some hints about our own recycling habits, what we do at home, and perhaps things we do wrong.
Sure. I mean, I will admit I am guilty of what some of my sources called wish recycling, which is putting materials into the recycling bin thinking, oh, well, it's plastic. It will probably be fine. I don't want it to go to the landfill. But really adhering to the rules that are set out by your local collection service is really important because if you do put in materials, like in my situation, if I put in numbers 5 and 6 plastics, that could mess up the process of recycling the numbers 1 and 2. And then a lot of the people I talked to emphasized the value of, repurposing or reducing how much we buy and finding other homes for it. Ames has a Rummage Rampage event every year to try to collect items that might be just put out on the curb for the landfill when those leases end in July, and trying to find a new home for them and benefiting nonprofits. So there's a lot that we can do. And even, a DNR study a few years ago found that about 70% of the material in our Iowa landfills could be diverted through recycling, reuse, composting, all of those different, avenues for stuff that ends up there.
Okay. Rachel Cramer is IPR's Harvest Public Media reporter. Thanks for the work on this, Rachel.
Thanks, Ben.
And we'll be back with more of your Newsbuzz edition in just a moment. Stay tuned. It's your Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. What do rural Iowans actually want? Not what their elected officials say they want. What people in small towns across our state are saying themselves when someone actually asks them. A new multi-state research project called the Rural Listening Project 250 did exactly that. In Iowa and 8 other states, researchers held polls and listening sessions to find out what's on rural Americans' minds as our country turns 250. Well, the answers from Iowa cut across party lines: a declining economy, health care costs that are breaking families, also a deep frustration with a political system that feels rigged against ordinary people. Cami Koons covers agriculture and the environment for the Iowa Capital Dispatch, and she's been reporting on what Iowa's rural voices are saying. I spoke with her yesterday. Cami, welcome back to our program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell us about the Rural Listening Project 250. Who set it up? What were they trying to find out?
Yeah, the Rural Listening Project 250, as you mentioned, surveyed across 9 different states, Iowa among those states. And some of the key concerns that they found from rural voters is that they're worried about executive overreach. They have a pretty strong distrust in major political parties. And they also expressed a desire for things like age and term limits to basically, they essentially feel like their politicians are not really getting at the things that they care about. And then a panel of Iowa leaders, community leaders from rural parts of the state, also expressed some kind of similar sentiments as what the overall project found. But theirs were a lot more, the Iowa-specific concerns had a lot more to do with economic vitality and healthcare, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and first and foremost, you mentioned that the sense that the political system isn't listening, that corporate money has way too much sway, and so people feel that the change has to come from the bottom up from small town Iowa in this case. But let's talk about those other concerns that came out in this survey. The rural economy came up again and again. What are people actually describing when they talk about economic decline? Is it one thing? Is it a combination of forces hitting all at once?
Yeah, I think it is a lot of things. Part of that is the difficulty for small businesses to stay open in a rural town. Oftentimes, Dollar General is often pitted as the villain in these stories because it'll come in, it's got lower prices than a lot of what local businesses or like a local grocery store, for example, can offer. And
Mhm.
so Dollar General will thrive while the local business closes. And then that kind of has a cumulative effect because when there are fewer small businesses in a town, it's harder to attract people to want to stay in that town. Young people leave, the town gets even smaller. They kind of feed one another. So that was a big problem that people mentioned. They also talked about agriculture, and as farms continue to scale up and up and up, there are fewer farmers, and the farmers trying to, make it have a harder time unless they're able to scale, which is very expensive. And then also that makes it harder for beginning farmers to come in. So again, affecting the ability of younger people to come back to the farm, back to their rural communities in Iowa, which in turn makes it hard for the community to thrive economically.
Yeah, and attach a name or two to those sentiments because you had a very young homeowner, city council member. That's where the future of Iowa is, if it's anywhere. And what did he tell you? Is this Larkin Christie? Am I remembering right?
Yeah, yeah. He has so much spirit, you could tell, for his community. He serves on in the local government because he decided, I see a need in my community and I'm going to step up to it. And that was something that he repeated over and over. And a lot of the other people on the panel repeated over and over. And that has to do with that from the bottom up approach that they feel will actually get change done more so than, speaking to politicians or trying to get their politicians to listen to them. They are trying to show them what they need through their actions, basically.
Yeah, and Larkin Christie from Kellogg, only 26 years old, but has real energy for that community. Another person that came out in your story, Doyle Turner, a farmer and a rancher. How does that person's experience connect with a broader sense of rural decline people described?
Yeah, Turner talked about how the agricultural economy, as it has scaled up and become really reliant on government subsidies, especially for row crops, that it basically has put less money into those rural communities. So instead of someone selling, a cow to the butcher shop that is in the local town and then the local people being able to buy it there, instead we have the whole vertical integration of the meat and farm industry. So those products and the farmers, the things that the farmers are growing are not staying in those communities necessarily. So that was a big thing that he talked about as well. And saying that if we're going to get people back on the farms and back into these rural communities, we need to have more value added products and things that we're growing.
Another big concern, healthcare that you mentioned, and the backdrop here, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is now law. Walk me through what this listening project found out about healthcare concerns in rural Iowa.
Yeah, Abby Calvert, who's a medical social worker from Sioux City, talked about this on the Iowa panel, basically saying that, as we have these changes to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, that a lot of those cuts are getting passed on to even private insurance premiums. So everyone's healthcare costs are going up. As that happens, a lot of people might drop off of care, which then means they're putting off those routine exams. They're putting off problems until they become an emergency, which then makes emergency rooms more crowded, which is especially damaging in a rural community where hospitals are already overstressed often or few and far between for people to come to.
One of the striking cases that you showed there in the healthcare concern, someone named Jessica, a cancer survivor, a nurse, a mother of a child with cancer, still struggling to get adequate care near her home in Logan. Well, what did she say about what it's like to navigate all of that from a rural community?
Yeah, she spoke about having to travel about an hour or so to get care while she had cancer, and now she has basically life-saving medication that she has to be on that is very expensive, that makes it difficult to find health insurance that wants to accept her because of her pre-existing conditions. And also working as a nurse, she sees lots of people in her community, including her own daughter, who actually has similar struggles and have cancer themselves and are dealing with basically the same problems, and definitely feeling the impact of the cost of having those issues.
Yeah, and to emphasize, the KFF analysis puts the number of newly uninsured Iowans at around 80,000. That ripples really beyond just 80,000, doesn't it? There's the 80,000 who've lost coverage, but it affects all their families, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Cami, as a reporter covering rural Iowa, I wonder, what did this project tell you, perhaps that you didn't already know? Perhaps there were surprises, even for you as someone who covers agriculture and the environment every day.
Yeah, something I thought that was really interesting from this project and from the panelists themselves is, well, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who knows how folks in a rural community act, but just this willingness to say, hey, we see a problem in our community and we're not going to sit back and hope that someone else is going to take care of it. We're going to step up and, we're going to be 26 and go out to be on our local government because we want to see something done. We're going to talk about these issues that we have a problem with because we're fed up with it, and why not us to try to make a difference. So I thought that was really kind of inspiring to hear from people. And then another thing I thought was interesting is several people on the panel, and this was also highlighted in the research project as a whole, but talking about how independent voters basically feel kind of lost as a subsect. And so several people on the panel mentioned that they have pretty historically just been independent voters, but they've recently declared a party on both sides because they wanted to vote in this recent primary election that we had. And essentially for the same things that we've been saying, that they're fed up with the elected officials that they have and they wanted to have more of a say in it.
Mm-hmm. This has been a quick flyover. Thanks, Cami Koons, for this quick survey of the Rural Listening Project 250, a multi-state research project. For someone listening who wants to dig into it further, this covered 9 states, Alaska to Indiana, Montana to Iowa. For someone wanting to dig in further to look at an individual state or what cut across the states as common themes and concerns a little bit more, where would they go?
You can go to the Rural Listening Project 250 website. It's hosted by United Today.
Cami Koons covers agriculture and the environment for Iowa Capital Dispatch. Cami, nice to have you back. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's your Friday Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. Iowa's 2 flagship universities have been slipping in global university rankings, and this year is no exception. The new U.S. News and World Report Global Rankings put the University of Iowa at 249th in the world. That's down from 238 last year, and a long way from its number 128 ranking a decade ago. Iowa State comes in at 400th this year, down from 344. Vanessa Miller covers higher education for the Gazette. I spoke with her earlier today. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what do these rankings actually measure, and what do they leave out?
Sure. So when the U.S. News and World Report does its global rankings, it honestly really focuses primarily on reputation, also on some research citations and publications, but they say it's very hard to compare them using the same metrics that they use for the national rankings because the institutions around the world don't use the same admission standards, testing standards, GPA standards. So it's apples to oranges. And that's why they look largely at reputation. So that's what these global rankings are really measured on. Like I said, reputation and research citations.
Okay, so what's driving the shift? I understand from your reporting, Chinese universities are surging.
Yeah, they have been working very hard to increase the number of institutions that they're offering at a high quality level because they were losing so many students to the United States. I mean, we've seen international student numbers really plummet at the University of Iowa, Iowa State University. Some of that has to do with policy and things in the United States, but it really is also that China stopped sending so many students. We were getting, thousands and thousands of students every year, and they realized that they were losing all of that brain power, in their own country because so many would stay here. And so, really, they've been working hard to increase those numbers and to keep their students going to school in their country.
Right. And in the Iowa City, Coralville area, that's really been noticeable in the last 10 years, hasn't it, Vanessa? Many fewer Chinese students here. And I have to say, one metric of that is they tended to have very nice cars.
Yeah, yes. You'll notice far fewer international students in general across the campuses, and that's been something they've been really worried about, and actually looking at diversifying the number of countries they're getting students from. So going down to South America, different places that they're focusing now on, where they used to, get again so many from Asia.
What's been the reaction this week from those two university heads? I know Barbara Wilson, the UI president, had a reaction.
Sure. Well, she was more just responding to the rankings. I mean, not responding to these rankings specifically, but to the idea that rankings are one thing that they talk about and look at, especially for those that they're very highly ranked in, like writing and, audiology and things like that, but saying that their campus also looks at other things that really matter to them. And talking about retention rates, she was looking at the University of Iowa retains 91% of its students from year one to year two. And that busted through its goal that it had set early. It talks about its really high acceptance rate, that it's easy to retain students, when you're only accepting 25% of your applicants and they're the cream of the crop, but when you're accepting 80+% of applicants and you're able to retain them all and graduate them all and get them into jobs right after graduation, those are the metrics that Iowa universities are really touting and saying matter to them, beyond just what US News and World Report is saying about them. I will say, though, that the rankings, unfortunately, do matter. I mean, students who are shopping for universities, they look at these, and reputation, as much as it feels like squishy and maybe not hard facts and science, it matters too, because if a kid is picking where they want to go to school and one has a better reputation and they know it, they may pick that one.
Yeah. At ISU and the UI, what are the strongest ranked subjects? List a few of those. Remind us.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously at Iowa State, we've got agriculture, which was ranked number 45, plant and animal science number 53. And again, this is in the world. So that's pretty high. There's 2,000 plus institutions that are considered in these rankings. The University of Iowa's top performing subject was neuroscience and behavior at 88, out of 2,000 plus in the world. Their clinical medicine program is 102. Nuclear medicine and radiology is 123. So these are again pretty highly ranked programs. And Iowa has a great reputation nationally for its writing program, of course.
Yeah. AI is figuring into everything these days. It's fast accelerating change in our culture, in our schools, and we don't really know where it's going. Does this figure into this story at all?
Well, I'm unsure exactly, but I will say that I was at the Regents meeting this last week, and one of the really interesting things that stood out to me is they were talking a lot about grade inflation and the impact of like these 4.5 and 5.0s are having on their admissions. But in addition to that, there are these AI generated essays, things like that. I think that their admission standards are getting harder to measure because it's hard to know what you're really getting. Is like everybody just getting 4.0s now because everybody's top grade is a 5.0, or are teachers being more lenient, or are students writing essays through artificial intelligence? So, and again, those metrics do matter in the national rankings, so again, I think that there is a trickle down effect in terms of artificial intelligence and who's getting into these colleges because of why, and then what impact that's having on all of their metrics.
Yeah, and I've spoken with professors saying, they have in-class essays, not ones they send home, because AI is so prevalent there, and it's just changed, it seems, everything in higher education classrooms. Vanessa Miller, thank you so much for filling us in on these latest rankings and how important they are in the big scheme. Vanessa covers higher education for the Gazette. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be back after a short break. It's a Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. It's a Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. Today is Juneteenth, of course, the federal holiday marking the end of slavery in our country. And this year marks the 22nd annual Juneteenth celebration in Iowa. In Cedar County, a local organization called Humans for Racial Justice is marking the occasion with a bus tour of historic sites across that county, connecting the region's past to the present-day meaning of our holiday, Juneteenth. Joan Blundell and Kathleen Darling are two of the founding members, and they started, along with some others, Humans for Racial Justice about 6 years ago in the wake of the George Floyd killing. Their focus is raising awareness of the experiences of minorities and communities where those stories can go unnoticed, and also understanding what local history reveals about who we were and who we are. Yesterday, I spoke with Joan and Kathleen. Kathleen and Joan, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I understand last year's inaugural tour, this event drew more people than expected, including a family traveling from out of state, and you're doing it again this year. We'll talk about that in just a moment, what's on offer this year. But I want to talk about the origins of Humans for Racial Justice. Who wants to take us back to the beginning of that? What was the moment or the conversation that made you and others say, we need to do something?
Well, I can speak to that. This is Kathleen. So after the murder of George Floyd, we decided we need to be active, and we need to do something that would really make a difference. And we thought we needed to educate ourselves, for one, because we were basically, we were all majority group. We were all white, privileged people that have had, who haven't had any dealings with harassment. So it gave us a chance to see what we could do that was just right then and there in West Branch. We ended up meeting monthly. We did a celebration for MLK in January. We eventually were able to put together a scholarship for a high schooler, which we called the Peace and Justice Scholarship, and we were able to award that to a high schooler, Hilda Hernandez, who had faced harassment in school and had an incredible sense of what she wanted to do with her future. So we were able to give her $1,500, and we were kind of a shoestring budget. So we don't have a lot of cash. We don't even take up dues. We just say, we need a little cash for our celebration with MLK, so we kind of passed the hat between us. And we had food drives, and then our first Juneteenth was last year. And it just kind of brought other neighbors and friends out of the woodwork, and we thought, this is something we need to pay more attention to. And so that's how we kind of come to this particular Friday for a Juneteenth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, we should make our listeners aware of the strong, historical threads in your part of Iowa. Quaker thread, Scattergood in the West Branch resistance to the Fugitive Slave Act. You did some research on what you didn't know about your history, the moral courage in your community and how it was expressed, right?
Oh, that is so true. Yeah, I was very inspired. One of our members, Gwen, went to the historical museum in Tipton in Cedar County and was able to kind of bring up a lot of information, along with a magazine article that she just came across. And I think she was like traveling at the time in a completely different state, but read about the people that were involved in the Underground Railroad. And it was a magazine article in the 1930s, I believe.
And Joan, I understand you've made a point to say there's a lot of misinformation about abolitionists, those who were very much against slavery in the 1800s when it was accepted by many. What did they actually do and change? What do you want people to walk away with in terms of understanding more clearly?
I think typically when a community sees violence and it is committed by neighbors, it's extremely difficult to know how you can be effective and who it is safe to talk to in your community. And I think through our tour, we'll see that there were some very brave people who were outsiders who came in because they really wanted to help freedom seekers. And there were members of the community who immediately responded and created safe houses and ways of communicating so that the slaves would be safe. But there were also members of the community where those who cared about abolition didn't know who was safe to talk to and might face some recriminations if their positions were known. So we found heroes who did very simple things like providing food and shelter and transportation, but also who were very wary about how they needed to keep their acts secret. Because if they didn't, the freedom seekers could die, could be shipped back to their origins. And also those who helped could be prosecuted. There were divisions about what was appropriate to do. Some members felt that hiding people and providing food was the best way to work, while others, like John Brown, who came to the community, was a real fighter and was ready to kill in order to free slaves. And, of course, he was involved, as many may know, in trying to assault communities where members of the community were being harshly prosecuted, and tried to attack the arsenal in Harper's Ferry, and some of his sons were killed. That is a controversial act to some, and it's heroism to others.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about this year's tour, the second one. There are two school buses, I understand. We'll be taking people through too many sites. Also a van from Scattergood Friends School. Multiple stops in Cedar County. We don't have much time, but give us a quick flyover of very quick flyover of what people will experience on your tour this year.
Certainly, this is Kathleen. We will be stopping at Traveler's Rest, which is an original site, a conductor's station, which station is just a place where slaves were safe, escaping slaves. And Travelers Rest is still standing, so it is almost 200 years old, and it's still here in West Branch. This particular station did get moved about 100 feet over, so it's not the original site, but it's the original building. And the original site had a kind of a crawl space for slaves to hide and stay out of sight and be safe. After stopping at Travelers Rest, we'll go to Springdale Cemetery, and there are at least probably about 6 conductors that are known, and conductors are just people that were helping escaping slaves. And they give the food and the other things that Joan had mentioned. So there's 6 that are known. There were so many conductors that were kept secret because it was so dangerous that you might be arrested, and you can get up to 2 years if under the Fugitive Slave Act for harboring slaves or just helping them. They basically made kindness illegal. So if you were caught at all, you could go to jail. You could be tarred and feathered. Your barn might be burned down, depending how much vengeance there is from the bounty hunters and the slave owners that are coming after so-called their property or the escaping slaves. So Springdale has the 6 conductors. North Liberty has the uniqueness of having some slaves that died on their way to escape to Canada. And there's 17 unmarked graves at the North Liberty Cemetery. And that's not in North Liberty. That is just beyond Springdale. And people will be visiting that site. And we were able to use some mechanism to find out where these people are buried. So the last site is at the William Maxim House, and this was a place where John Brown trained his militia. So it was quite the grand house when it was made. It's no longer there, but the site is marked with a large boulder.
Fascinating history, and we have to go now. So many parts, I think, were probably left unmentioned. You'll just have to take the tour, right? It departs
Yes.
On Friday, Juneteenth, today, the West Branch United Methodist Church at 5 p.m. today, Friday, Juneteenth. I hope you have a big turnout again this year. Joan Blundell and Kathleen Darling, 2 of the founding members of the Humans for Racial Justice organization in Cedar County. Thank you, Joan and Kathleen.
Thank you.
Now.
And that just about does it for this Newsbuzz edition of River to River from IPR News on this Friday, June 19th, 2026. Let's groove into the weekend with Nick Brunner, IPR Studio One Program Director. Nick, nice to have you on the program again.
Thoroughly news-buzzed, Ben. Thank you. Glad to be here.
And before you groove us into the weekend, some very odd music history this week. Did you know that this week, 60 years ago, this has got to be the ultimate fan mail if there ever was a thing. This is a bizarre piece of Beatlemania lore. A railway porter in Sunderland, England, noticed a large shipping box moving, and inside it he discovered a 12-year-old, Carol Dryden, a devoted fan who had genuinely attempted to mail herself directly to the Beatles in London. What do you think of that?
Man. I think there's too many ideas that are trying to get out at the same time. Let's see. It's a testament to responsible parenting. It's a dedication to fandom that I don't think we'll ever see again in our lifetime. It's all sorts of emotions roiling up at the same time. That's wild. Really? I am glad that you brought up London, however, Ben, because for a variety of reasons. One, World Cup has me in a very global mood here at home, and I feel like the music today that I'm bringing you is going to reflect some of that. So sticking with London, I'd like to play for you the London-based DJ and live music group called Ibibio Sound Machine. Their record isn't coming out until September. It's 4th or 5th in their oeuvre. It's called Chopping Mountain, but we did get the first single from this group, and it's something that I just absolutely love. This is called Concept of Love.
Ibibio Sound Machine with Concept of Love. I hear Afrobeat there, definitely modern electronic music, probably a few other things in that recipe. What a mix.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's a really satisfying blend of all of that. Afro-pop, dance, electronic music. The vocalist, man, the voice that you just heard belongs to Eno Williams. She's this English Nigerian powerhouse. And it's just, like I say, satisfaction is in every one of these records. Just, it's stark, it's fun. I do not dance with confidence these days, Ben, but if anything is going to get me to do that, it's going to be Ibibio Sound Machine.
You and me both. we need those types of tunes to give us the confidence. We have time for one more, Nick. What do you have?
All right, well, let's bring it back to the Hawkeye State. We received a submission last year from a musician called Mahala, and I was just bowled over by this smart, strong pop songwriting. Not only is her music infectious, but it's sincere, it's lush. It feels deeper to me than what you might think of when you think of quote-unquote pop music. She's fantastic, and this is her latest single. It's called Bruises Bloom.
Looking forward to the weekend, hoping that we last. Dream girl got rebound, I don't know how. Going back and forth for some time now. Don't know if I can trust my own mind. I lost myself. Roses bloom when no one sees. Under sleeves and underneath. Did you ever really care about me? Maybe not, just enough.
Nick, I want to say soothing and energizing there. Bruises Bloom. The artist calls herself Mahala. Did you say she's from around these parts?
She has been in Des Moines as an independent artist for the last 2 years, but she's been bouncing all over Iowa and helping uplift Iowa artists for years. She tells me that her music explores themes of growth and self-discovery and emotional honesty. I think you hear that in Bruises Bloom for sure. It's great with the hot weather coming up. That's just something to get you kind of swaying back and forth at sundown or sunup.
Yeah, we'll go out with more from Mahala, Bruises Bloom here. Nick Brunner, IPR Studio One Program Director. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks.
You too, Ben.
Today's program produced by Samantha McIntosh. I'm Ben Kiefer. Take care. Until next week.